The stars had always been quiet. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. In the year 2247, they finally got their answer. The Helix Dominion found Earth on a Tuesday. Their scout ships had been watching from the edge of the solar system for 3 years. They recorded everything. They watched humans build cities and fight wars. They watched them launch rockets and argue about politics. They watched them fall in love and raise children. And when they had seen enough, they made their decision. Earth was weak. Earth was primitive. Earth would kneel, or Earth would burn. Ambassador Vorath was an old creature. He had lived for 600 years and had watched dozens of species submit to the Dominion's rule. Some fought, some begged. All of them lost in the end. He expected nothing different from the small blue planet. His message was broadcast on every frequency, in every language. It appeared on television screens and phone displays. It echoed from radio towers and internet servers. No one on Earth could escape it. People of Earth. The translation began. You have been chosen to join the Helix Dominion. For 60,000 years, we have ruled this arm of the galaxy. 12 species serve under our protection. You will be the 13th. You will provide resources, soldiers, and loyalty. In return, you will be allowed to exist. You have 30 of your days to accept. If you refuse, we will remove you from this planet and give it to a species that deserves it. This is not a negotiation. This is a fact. The world panicked. Governments collapsed. Riots broke out in major cities. Religious leaders declared the end times. Scientists scrambled to verify what they were seeing. The message was real. The ships were real. Humanity was no longer alone, and their new neighbors wanted them dead or enslaved. But not everyone was afraid. Admiral Park Jin-ho stood on the bridge of the UDF Horizon, the flagship of Earth's United Defense Fleet. He was 57 years old, with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. He read the alien message 3 times, then set down his tablet and looked out at the stars. They think we are children, he said quietly. His communications officer looked up. Sir? Nothing. Admiral Park turned and walked to the central command table. Get me a secure line to Dr. Kim Yuna at the Prometheus facility. 3,000 kilometers below, in a bunker buried deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Dr. Kim Yuna was already waiting for the call. She was 43 years old, with sharp eyes and hands that never stopped moving. Around her, dozens of screens displayed data that would have looked like nonsense to anyone else. To her, it was a weapon. Admiral, she said when the connection opened, I assume you received the message. The whole world received the message. Then you know what I am about to tell you. Dr. Kim pulled up a holographic display. We have been listening to their communications for 15 years. We know their fleet positions. We know their weapon frequencies. We know the harmonic patterns of their shield technology. She paused. We are ready. Admiral Park was silent for a long moment. Are you certain? I am certain that if we fight them the way they expect, we will lose. Their ships number in the hundreds of thousands. Their soldiers have conquered 1,000 worlds, but they have never fought an enemy they could not see. They have never faced a weapon they could not understand. Doctor, Kim's voice was steady. They think this will be a long war. Admiral, they are wrong. Rever Place. 9. In the days that followed, the world's governments did something they had never done before. They agreed. The United Earth Council was formed in secret, led by Chairwoman Seo Hyun, a diplomat who had spent her entire career preparing for a moment she hoped would never come. She gathered the leaders of every nation and told them the truth. We have 2 choices, she said. We can surrender and become slaves, or we can fight and become legends. There is no middle ground. The vote was unanimous. On the alien observation station orbiting Neptune, The Dominion scouts reported that Earth was mobilizing. They saw ships being launched. They saw soldiers being trained. They saw factories producing weapons. They sent their reports back to the homeworld and laughed among themselves. "They are brave," one scout said. "Stupid, but brave. It will not matter." Another replied, "The fleet will arrive in 30 days. By the end of the year, there will be no more humans." They did not see the small ship that slipped past them in the darkness. They did not detect the null space engine that made it invisible to every sensor they had. They did not know that Captain Choi Tae-ho and his crew were already mapping their positions, recording their communications, and sending everything back to Earth. The humans called the ship the Ghost. It was the first of its kind. Built in secret over 12 years using technology the Dominion did not know existed. Its crew of 12 had trained for this mission their entire adult lives. They knew they might not survive. They went anyway. Lieutenant Baek Hana sat at her station, watching the data stream across her screen. "They have no idea we are here," she whispered. Captain Choi nodded slowly. "That is the point." Back on Earth, Admiral Park Jin-ho stood before the United Earth Council and delivered his report. The room was silent when he finished. "So we have a chance," Chairwoman CO said. "We have more than a chance." Admiral Park met her eyes. "We have a plan. We have a plan." Outside, the stars continued to shine, cold and indifferent. The Dominion fleet was gathering. The countdown had begun, and somewhere in the darkness between worlds, a ghost was watching, waiting, and preparing for the war that would change everything. Humanity was not going to kneel. Humanity was not going to burn. Humanity was going to win. The Dominion homeworld of Keth Prime was a massive planet covered in metal and light. Billions of creatures lived there, serving the empire that had ruled the stars for 60,000 years. At its heart stood the Grand War Chamber, where Fleet Commander Orvan prepared for the conquest of Earth. Orvan was not like Ambassador Vorath. He did not waste time with words or warnings. He was a soldier, bred for war, trained to destroy anything that stood against the Dominion. He had crushed rebellions on 40 worlds. He had burned cities and broken armies. He had never known defeat. 40,000 ships, he announced to his war council. 12 million soldiers. We will arrive at the human world in 28 days. We will offer them one final chance to surrender. When they refuse, we will teach the galaxy what happens to species that challenge us. The council members nodded in agreement. This was how things worked. This was how things had always worked. The strong conquered the weak, and the Dominion was the strongest of all. Across the galaxy, other species watched through observation drones. The Veen Consortium, a network of traders and merchants, placed bets on how long Earth would resist. The Crystalline Assembly, ancient beings made of living stone, composed songs of mourning for the humans who would soon die. Everyone knew how this story ended. It was the same story every time, but none of them knew about the ghost. Captain Choi Tae-ho had been flying through Dominion space for 18 days. His ship moved like smoke through darkness, invisible to every sensor and scanner the aliens possessed. His crew worked in silence, recording everything they saw. Lieutenant Baek Hana was the youngest member of the crew at 31 years old. She had joined the military at 18 and had shown a talent for technology that no one could explain. Now she sat at her station, watching the Dominion fleet assemble. "There are more ships than we expected," she said quietly. Captain Choi stood behind her, his arms crossed. "How many more?" Fleet Commander Orvan has called in reserves from 6 sectors. "They want to make an example of us." She turned to look at him. "They are bringing everything they have." "Good," Captain Choi's voice was calm. "That means everything they have will be in one place. On Earth's moon, a secret base called Selene served as the command center for the Prometheus Initiative." Dr. Kim Yuna had not slept in 3 days. Her team worked around the clock, building the weapons that would decide the fate of humanity. General Yu Minho arrived at midnight. his face tired but determined. He commanded all of Earth's ground forces, millions of soldiers who were ready to fight and die for their planet. But he knew that ground forces would not matter if the Dominion controlled the sky. "How are we progressing?" he asked. Dr. Kim pointed to a holographic display showing 17 dots scattered across the solar system. "The Sunlance platforms are in position. We tested the frequency calibration this morning. It works. It works. You are certain it will penetrate their shields? Their shields are designed to stop energy and matter. They absorb and redirect everything that hits them. But the Sunlance does not hit their shields." "Doctor." Kim's eyes were bright with something between exhaustion and excitement. "It passes through them. It vibrates at the exact frequency that makes their shields transparent. They have never seen anything like it because no one has ever thought to try it." General Yu nodded slowly. "And if you are wrong? Azuki, then we die." But I am not wrong. In the shadows of Dominion space, the Ghost continued its mission. The crew recorded the position of every flagship, the location of every command vessel, the communication patterns of every admiral. They mapped the entire invasion force without being detected. Specialist An Somin was responsible for communications. She was 29 years old and had a gift for languages. In the months before the mission, she had learned to read and speak the Dominion's primary language. Now she listened to their conversations and smiled. "They are arguing about who gets to lead the ground assault," she reported. 3 different admirals want the honor of being the first to set foot on Earth." "Let them argue," Captain Choi replied. "It will not matter soon." Director Shin Unji ran military intelligence for the United Earth Council. She was 60 years old and had spent her life learning secrets. Now she sat in a dark room on Earth, watching the data stream in from the Ghost. "They have positioned their entire command structure in one sector," she said to Admiral Park. "Every admiral, every general, every decision-maker, all together." Admiral Park looked at the tactical display. 40,000 ships stretched across space in a formation that was meant to be overwhelming. It was meant to show Earth how hopeless resistance would be. Instead, it showed him exactly where to strike. "Arrogance," he said softly. "They have never lost," Director Shin replied. "They do not believe they can lose. That is their weakness." The days passed. The Dominion fleet drew closer. On Earth, people held their families tight and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. The military kept the Prometheus initiative secret. They did not want to give false hope. They did not want the enemy to know what was coming. Captain Choi Tae-ho made his final report on the 26th day. The Ghost had mapped everything, every ship, every commander, every weakness. "Phase 1 is complete," he said through the encrypted channel. "Awaiting orders for Phase 2. Dr. Kim Yuna's voice came back clear and strong. "Hold position. When the invasion begins, you will transmit final coordinates. Then, you will run." "Understood." Lieutenant Baek-hana looked at her captain. "Do you think it will work?" Captain Choi was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, something rare and precious aboard a ship that had been silent for nearly a month. "I think we are about to find out." The Dominion fleet was 2 days away. 40,000 ships, 12 million soldiers, 60,000 years of unbroken victory, and one small ghost floating among them, carrying the data that would end their empire forever. The ultimatum expired at exactly 6 o'clock, Galactic Standard Time. Fleet Commander Orvan stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive ship called the Unbroken Will. Around him, thousands of officers worked at their stations, preparing for the moment they had trained their entire lives for. The conquest of a new world. "All ships," Orvan commanded, his voice echoing through every vessel in the fleet. "Begin. Advance. Formation, Keth 7. Destroy anything that resists." 40,000 ships activated their engines. The formation stretched across millions of kilometers, a wall of metal and fire that blocked out the stars. This was the power of the Helix Dominion. This was what 60,000 years of conquest looked like. Across the galaxy, observers settled in to watch the spectacle. Representatives from neutral species gathered around their screens, eager to see another primitive world crushed beneath the Dominion's boot. The Veen Consortium had opened a betting pool on how long Earth would last. The longest bet was 6 cycles, roughly 18 Earth months. Most bets were much shorter. Some expected the humans to surrender before the first shot was fired. The crystalline assembly played their dirges, beautiful songs of mourning for a species that was about to die. They had played these songs many times before. They would play them many times again. No one expected what happened next. Specialist An Salmon was monitoring communications aboard the UDF Horizon when she noticed the first anomaly. A Dominion ship at the rear of the formation had sent a message to the flagship. The message never arrived. "That is strange," she muttered. She ran a diagnostic on her equipment. Everything was working perfectly. She checked the alien frequencies again. More messages were failing. Ships at the front could not reach ships at the back. Commanders were calling for updates and receiving only silence. "Admiral," she said, her voice rising with urgency. "Something is happening to their communications. They are losing contact with each other." Admiral Park Jin-ho walked to her station. On the screen, he could see the chaos spreading through the Dominion fleet. Ships were slowing down, uncertain of their orders. Formations were breaking apart, as commanders lost track of their subordinates. "Dr. Kim's frequency disruptors," he said quietly. "They are working." Months earlier, Dr. Kim Yuna had developed a weapon that did not kill. Instead, it attacked the frequencies the Dominion used for communication. It flooded their channels with invisible noise, corrupting every message, breaking every connection. The aliens could still think. They could still see. But they could no longer hear each other. On the bridge of the Unbroken Will, Fleet Commander Orvin felt the first touch of doubt. "Why is no one responding?" he demanded. "Admiral Teth, report your position." "Admiral Cran, confirm formation status." Nothing. Only silence. "Check the equipment," he ordered. "Find the fault." His officers scrambled to obey. But there was no fault to find. Their systems were perfect. Their technology was flawless. The problem was something they had never imagined. Something they had no defense against. Someone was jamming them. Aboard the Ghost, Captain Choi Tae-ho watched the confusion spread. His crew had activated the disruptors 30 minutes earlier, using the coordinates they had gathered over weeks of silent observation. Now they watched as the most powerful fleet in the galaxy fell into disorder. "It is working," Lieutenant Baek-hana said, her voice barely a whisper. "They cannot coordinate." Captain Choi nodded. "Send the signal." Phase 2. Lieutenant Beck transmitted a single burst of data toward Earth. It contained the exact coordinates of every flagship, every command vessel, every admiral in the Dominion fleet. The transmission lasted less than 1 second. No one in the Dominion detected it. On Selene Base, Dr. Kim Yuna received the coordinates. She verified them 3 times, then turned to General Yu Minho. "We have their positions. All of them." The general's face was pale. He understood what was about to happen. He understood that they were about to change the course of galactic history. "Send the order to the Sunlance platforms," he said. Dr. Kim typed in the authorization codes. On 17 hidden stations, scattered across the solar system, weapons began to charge. These were not ordinary weapons. They did not fire missiles or energy beams. They fired something far more dangerous. Back in the Dominion fleet, Admiral Teth managed to restore partial communications with a nearby vessel. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why can we not reach the flagship?" "Unknown," the response came. "All channels are compromised. We are trying to—" The transmission cut off. Admiral Teth stared at his screen, trying to understand. In 60,000 years, nothing like this had ever happened. The Dominion's technology was supposed to be perfect. Their communications were supposed to be unbreakable, but humans did not care what was supposed to be. Fleet Commander Orvan finally managed to send a message through the chaos. All ships, maintain formation. Continue, advance. Do not stop for any reason. Some ships received the message, others did not. The formation that had been so perfect, so overwhelming, was now scattered and confused. Ships drifted in different directions. Commanders made their own decisions because they could not receive orders. Across the galaxy, the observers stopped talking. Something was wrong. This was not how conquests were supposed to look. The Dominion fleet should have been an unstoppable wave. Instead, it looked like a broken mirror, pieces floating in all directions. Admiral Park Jin-ho stood at the center of the UDF Horizons Bridge. Around him, his officers worked in perfect silence. They knew what was coming. They had trained for this moment for years. All weapons platforms report ready, an officer announced. Admiral Park looked at the tactical display. 40,000 ships, 12 million soldiers, 60,000 years of history, all about to end. Fire, he said. And 17 beams of light lanced across the darkness of space, moving faster than anything the Dominion had ever seen, passing through shields that had never been breached, and striking targets that never saw them coming. The war had just begun, and it was already over. The beams were invisible to the naked eye. They traveled through space at speeds that should have been impossible. They crossed millions of kilometers in the time it takes a heart to beat. And when they reached the Dominion fleet, they did not stop. Fleet Commander Orvan was looking at a tactical display when his ship died. One moment, he was trying to restore communications. The next moment, there was light everywhere. Light that burned through metal and flesh and bone. Light that turned the greatest warship in the galaxy into dust. He did not have time to be afraid. He did not have time to understand. He simply ceased to exist. The Sunlance was Dr. Kim Yuna's masterpiece. She had spent 15 years studying the Dominion's shield technology, learning its secrets, finding its weakness. Their shields were designed to stop everything. Energy weapons, kinetic missiles, nuclear explosions. Nothing could break through. But the Sunlance did not break through. It did not fight the shields at all. Instead, it vibrated at the exact frequency that made the shields invisible. The beams passed through the shields as if they were not there, striking the ships inside with all the power of a focused star. 17 platforms, 17 targets, 17 flagships erased from existence. The entire process took 43 seconds. Across the galaxy, the observers stopped breathing. The Veen Consortium's betting pools collapsed. The crystalline assembly's dirges stuttered into silence. No one moved. No one spoke. They were watching something that should have been impossible. Admiral Teth was one of the survivors. His ship was not a flagship, so it was not targeted. He watched his tactical display as 17 icons vanished, one after another. 17 admirals. 17 command vessels. 17 voices that would never speak again. No, he whispered. This cannot be happening. But it was happening. And it was not over. Aboard the Ghost, Captain Choi Tae-ho received new orders. Phase 3, he announced to his crew. Get us out of here. Lieutenant Baek-hana was already working. Her fingers flew across her console, activating the null space engine, pulling the Ghost out of normal space and into the shadow realm, where no sensor could follow. What happens now? She asked. Now, the captain said. Our fleet arrives. They appeared on the edge of the Dominion formation like ghosts materializing from darkness. 147 Earth warships, small, compared to the alien vessels, but equipped with technology the Dominion had never seen. Admiral Park Jin-ho stood at the center of the Horizons Bridge. His face was calm. His voice was steady. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for since the day they first intercepted an alien signal. His message broadcast on every frequency, in every language the Dominion used. This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Fleet. Your commanders are dead. Your communications are broken. Your shields are useless against us. You have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons and engines. Any ship that resists will be destroyed. This is your only warning." For a long moment, nothing happened. The Dominion ships drifted in confusion, their crews struggling to understand what they were seeing. Their invincible fleet had been crippled in less than a minute. Their supreme commanders had been killed without firing a single shot. The war they had expected to last 20 cycles was already lost. Sergeant Kwon Do-hyun stood in the launch bay of the assault carrier Indomitable. He was 34 years old, a Marine who had trained for combat his entire adult life. Around him, hundreds of other soldiers waited in their armor, ready to board enemy vessels if necessary. Corporal Lee Nari stood beside him. She was 28 and had grown up on a farm in the southern provinces. Now she held a plasma rifle and watched the tactical display with wide eyes. "Are they going to fight?" she asked. Sergeant Kwon shook his head slowly. "Look at them. They do not know what to do. Their whole lives, they have been the predators. Now they are the prey." One by one, the Dominion ships began powering down. Weapons went offline. Engines stopped firing. Lights flickered and dimmed across the massive alien vessels as their crews chose survival over death. Not all of them surrendered. A few captains tried to fight. They fired their weapons at the Earth ships, expecting the same shields that had protected them for 60,000 years to protect the humans as well. They were wrong. The Earth ships dodged with speed and precision that seemed impossible. Their weapons struck back with the same frequency technology as the Sunlance, smaller but just as deadly. Within minutes, the resisting ships were debris floating in the void. The rest surrendered faster after that. On Keth Prime, Ambassador Vorath watched the battle through an observation drone. His hands shook, his hearts pounded. Everything he had believed, everything he had known, was crumbling before his eyes. "How?" he demanded. "How is this possible?" No one could answer him. No one understood. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to fall like every other species had fallen. Instead, they had done the impossible. They had defeated the Dominion in a single battle. A battle that lasted less than 5 hours, from the first shot to the last surrender. Dr. Kim Yuna stood in the command center on Selene Base, watching the reports come in. Around her, her team was cheering, crying, hugging each other. They had done it. Their weapon had worked, but Dr. Kim did not cheer. She looked at the numbers on her screen. Thousands of alien ships destroyed or captured. Millions of enemy soldiers surrendered. An empire that had ruled for 60,000 years, broken in a single afternoon. "What happens now?" General Yu asked her. Dr. Kim was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice tired but strong. "Now we build a new galaxy, one where no one conquers anyone else. One where species work together instead of destroying each other." She paused. "It will not be easy, but we have shown them that we can do impossible things." Outside, the stars continued to shine. But something had changed. Something fundamental had shifted in the balance of power. Humanity had arrived. And the galaxy would never be the same. The war ended at exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. When historians would later write about this day, they would struggle to explain how a species that had been unknown to the galaxy just 30 days earlier had brought down an empire that had stood for 60,000 years. They would study the technology. They would analyze the tactics. They would interview the survivors, but they would never truly understand. Because what the humans had done was not just a military victory. It was a statement. A declaration that the old rules no longer applied. The surrender was broadcast across every observation channel in the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear of the Dominion for generations watched as alien commanders knelt before human officers. They watched as the greatest fleet ever assembled was captured without a prolonged fight. They watched as everything they knew about power and strength was rewritten in a single afternoon. Admiral Park Jin-ho accepted the formal surrender aboard the Horizon. 12 Dominion captains stood before him, their heads bowed, their pride shattered. Behind them, through the viewport, the captured fleet drifted in silence. "You will be treated fairly," Admiral Park told them. "Your crews will not be harmed. Your ships will be returned to your people once peace is established. This is not about revenge. This is about showing the galaxy that there is a better way." The captains did not respond. They could not understand a species that showed mercy after victory. In their world, the strong crushed the weak. That was the natural order. That was the only order. But humans did not follow the natural order. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Vorath was brought to Earth in chains. He had tried to flee Keth Prime when the news of the defeat arrived. But human ships had intercepted him. Now he stood in the Great Hall of the United Earth Council, facing the leaders of the species he had threatened to destroy. Chairwoman Seo Hayan sat at the center of the council. She was 62 years old, with gray hair and eyes that had seen both the best and worst of humanity. She had led her people through the greatest crisis in their history. "Ambassador Vorath," she said, her voice calm and clear. "You came to our world with a message. You told us to submit or die. Do you remember?" Vorath said nothing. His translator clicked and hummed, but no words came. "I will tell you what I remember," Chairwoman Seo continued. "I remember sitting in this very room, reading your ultimatum. I remember thinking about my children and my grandchildren. I remember wondering if they would live to see another year." She stood up and walked toward him slowly. "You gave us 30 days to surrender. You thought we would spend those days in fear, begging for mercy, hoping you would show kindness. Instead, we spent those days preparing. We refined our weapons. We trained our soldiers. We made ourselves ready for a war you thought would last 20 cycles." She stopped directly in front of him. "It lasted 4 hours. Vorath finally spoke, his voice broken and confused. "How? How did you do this? We watched you. We studied you. You were primitive. You were nothing." Chairwoman Seo smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You watched us for 3 cycles. We watched you for 15 years. You saw what we allowed you to see. You never considered that we might be hiding our true capabilities. You never imagined that a primitive species might be smarter than you." She turned and walked back to her seat. "That was your mistake, Ambassador. You thought this would be a war of ships and soldiers, of numbers and firepower. But humans do not fight that kind of war. We fight to win, by any means necessary, at any cost." The ambassador was taken away to await judgment. The council would eventually show him mercy, sending him back to Keth Prime to live out his days in disgrace. It was a punishment worse than death for a creature who had spent 600 years being feared. The Helix Dominion was dissolved within a standard year. The 12 species that had served under its rule were freed, allowed to govern themselves for the first time in thousands of years. Some struggled with their new freedom. Others embraced it eagerly. All of them looked at humanity with a mixture of fear and respect. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The factories that had produced weapons began producing other things. The soldiers who had trained for battle returned to their families. The scientists who had created the Sunlance turned their attention to new challenges, new problems, new possibilities. Admiral Park Jin-ho retired to a small house in the countryside of Korea. He spent his days gardening and reading, enjoying the peace that he had fought so hard to protect. Sometimes, reporters would come, asking for interviews, wanting to know how he felt about changing the course of galactic history. He always gave the same answer: "I did my duty. Nothing more." Dr. Kim Yuna returned to her laboratory, already working on new theories, new inventions, new ways to push the boundaries of what was possible. She received dozens of awards, but she displayed none of them. The only decoration in her office was a small photograph of Earth, taken from space, showing the blue planet that had refused to die. Captain Choi Tae-ho and the crew of the Ghost received humanity's highest honors in a classified ceremony. Their mission would remain secret for decades. known only to a handful of people. They did not mind. They had not done it for glory. They had done it because it needed to be done. Lieutenant Baek Hana eventually became a captain herself, commanding her own ship on the frontier of explored space. She never forgot those days aboard the Ghost, drifting through enemy territory, watching and waiting, and believing that they could do the impossible. Sergeant Kwon Do-hyun and Corporal Lee Nari were married 2 years after the war. They raised 3 children on the same farm where Lee Nari had grown up. Sometimes, at night, they would sit outside and look at the stars, remembering the day when everything changed. And across the galaxy, species that had trembled under the Dominion's rule for generations began to whisper a new word. A word that meant hope